It was just after midnight when I first heard the whispering. The sounds were so soft they could have been mistaken for the wind rustling through the trees outside, but I knew better. The hairs on the back of my neck stood erect as I strained to listen. Someone or something was just outside my window, murmuring in tones too low to comprehend. I had just moved into this old house in a sleepy neighborhood in Ohio, and the weight of its age pressed down on me like a thick fog. But I never expected to feel so exposed, so vulnerable in my own home. The day I arrived was overcast, the sky heavy with clouds that seemed to echo my uncertainty. My new home, a two-story structure built in the 1920s, had creaky floorboards and a musty smell that clung to the air. I remember unpacking in the dim light of the living room, the walls adorned with faded wallpaper that had seen better days. It was a quiet area, the kind where everyone knew each other's names, but somehow the silence felt more suffocating than comforting. As I set my boxes down, I caught sight of the neighbor's house across the street. The curtains were drawn tight, but I could have sworn I saw a shadow flit past, a flicker just out of my line of sight. That first night, I brushed off the unsettling feelings, attributing them to my imagination. After all, moving to a new place is always stress-inducing. I set up my bedroom as best as I could, the rickety bed creaking as I lay down. The overcast skies soon turned to rain, the droplets pattering rhythmically against the window. That soothing sound lulled me into a fitful sleep until the whispers pulled me from my dreams, twisting my stomach with an inexplicable dread. I strained my ears, listening for what I feared, a voice I could recognize, or maybe even something more sinister. My mind raced with possibilities. Who could it be? Was it just a stray cat or the wind playing tricks? I convinced myself to remain calm. Still, I found myself getting up to check the window, hesitating as I pulled back the curtain just enough to peek outside. The street lay empty and dark, the only sounds coming from the whispering trees. But as I turned away, that unsettling feeling burrowed deeper into my gut. I returned to bed, trying to shake off the fear as I forced myself to sleep with the light on, a protective barrier against the unknown. The following days passed in a blur, but the whispers never ceased. Each night, they grew bolder, as if whatever was outside wanted me to listen, to engage. I started to recognize the sound's pitch, how it seemed to change depending on the wind's direction. I considered my neighbors, were they playing pranks? But every time I mustered the courage to look outside, all I found was an eerie stillness. One evening, while I was washing dishes, I caught a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision. I turned my head too late, but the feeling of being watched pushed me to the edge. I wanted to dismiss it as a figment of my imagination, but that wouldn't quiet the unease gnawing at me. I finally broke down and went to speak to the neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Henshaw, who lived alone. As I approached her house, I felt the strange sensation of eyes on me from the shadows of the trees lining our street. I knocked, and she appeared at the door, a smile on her sunken face. "Oh, honey, I don't see many new faces around here," she said. I introduced myself and casually mentioned the whispers. Her smile faltered slightly, and she seemed to glance over my shoulder, her expression growing wary. "That's an odd thing to hear, dear," she said. Her voice lowered as if sharing a secret. "This house has always had stories, be careful with what you invite." Her cryptic warning lingered in my mind long after I left. That night, I decided I would stay awake, armed with my phone in one hand and a flashlight in the other. The whispers echoed outside, a chorus of unintelligible sounds that twisted into chilling notes. I positioned myself near the window, peering out into the darkness, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Time slipped by, but the noise grew louder, more insistent. My heart raced as I made out words, although they remained just out of my reach. Each time I thought I understood, they twisted back into incomprehensible murmurs. Finally, I saw the first flickers of movement, shadows darting between the trees across the street. I squinted, trying to discern the forms, but the night played tricks on my eyes. Were there figures? The sound of cracking twigs confirmed my fears. I stumbled back, half wanting to retreat, but equally driven by some unfathomable curiosity. The whispers shaped into sounds that might have been a name, my name. I froze. Something chilled me to the bone, a realization that whatever was out there had been calling to me all along. As the shadows grew bolder, I frantically scanned the room for something to defend myself. It felt both ridiculous and completely necessary. Then I heard it, the soft scratching against the window, like nails against glass, followed by a low voice whispering urgently once more. I could feel the breath on my neck, icy as it beckoned me closer. The sensation of being both watched and awaited clawed at me. Summoning what little bravery I had left, I aimed my flashlight at the window, hoping to illuminate the darkness, but instead found nothing but the oppressive silence that followed. The next day, sleep-deprived and shaky, I returned to Mrs. Henshaw to seek answers. Her face paled upon hearing my recount of the night. "It often attempts to befriend newcomers," she explained in a hushed tone, "but it does so in a way that isn't safe. You must get out of that house before it knows you." I felt a chill run down my spine. The idea of abandoning my home felt impossible, yet the whispers echoed incessantly in my mind. I tried to convince myself they were figments of isolation, but deep down, I feared that something awaited me in that house, something that wanted far more than companionship. That evening, I packed a few essentials into my car, deciding it was time for a break. As I stepped outside, the wind howled through the trees, and for a moment, I thought I heard laughter, high-pitched and mocking, echoing through the night air. I shook my head, determined to escape the grasp of that house and its whispers, and yet, just as I turned to leave, I noticed something on the ground, a small, tarnished locket glinting in the dim light. I hesitated, my hand hovering above it, uncertain whether to pick it up. Something about it felt familiar, as if it had been waiting for me to stumble upon it. Compelled by curiosity, I clasped the locket in my hand, a sudden chill creeping up my arm. As I unlocked my car door, the whispering grew louder, frantic and desperate, as if the house itself cried out in protest. I fumbled with the keys, my heart pounding against my chest. The noise turned into a sing-song chant, building to a terrifying crescendo. I dropped the locket and jumped into the car, slamming the door shut as I twisted the key in the ignition. My hands trembled, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me as I glanced back towards the house, its dark windows staring back at me like hollow eyes. As I peeled away down the street, the whispers faded into the distance, but something inside me twisted with unresolved fear. Days turned into weeks, and while I found temporary refuge in a hotel, the shadows of that house haunted my dreams. Every rustle of leaves or creak of the floor would jolt me awake, searching for the whispers that never returned. I never went back to retrieve my belongings, leaving them to mingle with the secrets that lay hidden within those walls. It was just a house, I told myself, but that didn't stop the dread from creeping back. The memory of the locket burned into my mind. Months later, as I sat alone in my new apartment, I received a letter. It was from Mrs. Henshaw, enclosing a small key she described as belonging to the house I once occupied. "For the day you return it," read ominously. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read her handwriting, the faintest echoes of whispers stirring in my mind. I glanced toward the window where shadows danced just outside my view. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, the weight of unspoken promises hanging in the air, unraveling like a thread pulled from a worn seam. I never did go back to that house.